What happens when an unstoppable hype train collides with an unbreakable critical wall? You get the Rabbit R1 media coverage. This has been a nightmare. This whole release has been a nightmare, not only for the Rabbit R1, but also for the Humane AI pin, or Humane pin, whatever you want to call it. It's not surprising, considering both of these were incredibly overhyped devices, and they've been bucketed together despite one being a fraction of the price of the other. But was all of the criticism warranted? Yes, I can tell you yes. But I wanted to go into taking a look at the Rabbit R1 with a more nuanced view. Obviously, this is not a good product. I haven't watched every single review. I haven't watched most reviews of it. I've only watched a very small amount of coverage that is almost overwhelmingly negative. And I wanted to go on with this more nuanced view because, frankly, I think people are conflating this concept of hyped and overhyped devices that do not deliver on a promise, and this concept that AI will never reach the hype goals that many people hope it will, because those are not the same point. This is not the representation of an entire industry. It is not the representation of AI hardware. It is the representation of failed promises. And we need to isolate that in order to get to the heart of what makes the Rabbit R1 a bad product and what makes the future more interesting. Please, to the best of your abilities, set aside your biases, keep an open mind, and listen or share as we dive into the Rabbit R1 review. I've got a confession. Whenever a device manufacturer puts the design of their product first, or really hypes this idea of having an incredibly, out there, brilliant design, which is generally the approach of teenage manufacturing in general, I find myself skeptical. Because in my mind, I'm more concerned with the functionality of a product rather than the design of the product. That being said, when I first got the Rabbit R1, it made me feel good. The design is nice. It kind of gives me a throwback to the early 2000s where plastic was designed with brighter colors and more striking finishes. Now, this is not like the same plastic that you'd get in 2001 or the early 2000s. This is a lot more refined design. It feels very tightly designed. It has very small seams. It has a brilliant color that I don't even know if it shows up well enough on camera. And it's generally a very compact and portable and cool little device. It's a great little gadget. But unfortunately, that's kind of where my positives on the design ends. Frankly, I'm not sure it needs to be as thick or as large as this. It's thicker than a lot of smartphones, and it's got these massive bezels both on the front of the screen and then around the screen, which makes the footprint a lot larger than hypothetically it might need to be. Now, teenage engineering puts a lot of effort and focus in this concept of physical interactions, of dials and buttons and switches, which you can see in a lot of the hardware that they design. By the way, teenage manufacturing was the designer of the Rabbit R1, not the manufacturer. And I think it's probably overblown. There are probably still people that care about physical dials or physical switches, but the dial on the Rabbit R1 is this pretty heavily resistive spin wheel, and this button is clicky, but not really that much clickier than a lot of buttons out there. What I found kind of interesting is this heavily mechanical solution in the camera. So right now you can see the camera, but you can't see the lens. And it's because the actual sensor can switch back both places. It can either turn towards you for a selfie or turn away from you for a normal picture, which is a cool concept that was experimented with several smartphones years and years ago, but never really took off. Now, frankly, I want to isolate the experience of using this versus using a smartphone, because there is nothing about the experience of using this that is parallel to your experience of using a smartphone. There's no home screen. There's no apps. There's no ability to go through your camera roll and look at historical pictures. There's no way to take pictures and save them in the traditional way that you would. This is an entirely new experience. Instead of building off of what was very, very clearly a success in even the original iPhone, and then moving forward, we've got nearly 15 years of smartphone experience of very, very incredibly refined devices and a refined experience. Instead of working off of that, Rabbit instead tried to build this from scratch, build a completely different experience from scratch. And there's a big concept in design of kind of design through subtraction. Instead of working completely off of optimal design that has already existed, trying to do stuff with minimal solutions. And that's very much the Rabbit R1's design ethos. This is not a touchscreen. Instead, all interactions are purely reached through a scroll of the scroll wheel, a tap of the button or several taps of the button, or a shake. Once I dove into the software, I was a little bit disappointed to find that none of the experiences are intuitive relative to what I'd come to expect from using a smartphone. There were no gesture navigations or anything like that. Tapping the screen did nothing, as expected now, but unfortunately, it took me a little bit to actually dive into the features and dive into the user guide to find that, if I want to change the voice volume on the assistant, I need to shake and then enter settings, find my way to volume, click and hold volume while I turn the turn wheel, which frankly is an accessibility nightmare, and then finally navigate my way back to the home screen. It's such a massive amount of effort for something as small as changing the volume, something that could be done on your phone with either a couple taps or just a button press. It's wild. Was changing the volume something that you'd particularly need to do a lot on the Rabbit R1? Well, it depends on how you go about using it. If you use the Rabbit R1 as something more smartphone-like or smart device-like, by the ability of, for example, playing music on Spotify, then yeah, I am sure that you want to change the volume on your Spotify quite frequently, and your only option is basically to use your headphones, any sort of controls built into your headphones. You got to hope that your headphones already have that. But let's talk about the setup process. To set up the Rabbit R1, there were only a couple initial steps. You basically create an account with Rabbit, and then you create basically what's called your rabbit hole. I'm not sure why they called it that. Down the rabbit hole, I suppose. Well, the rabbit hole is basically a journal or a database to store all of your interactions with your Rabbit R1, which is kind of a cool concept, but frankly, it's kind of a disorganized mess. You access your rabbit hole in order to connect your Rabbit R1 to your existing accounts. For example, you can connect your Spotify account, you can connect your Uber account. There may be one more, and that's about it. There's very, very little options to connect this with any accounts. And in demonstrations for the Rabbit R1, the concept was pretty appealing, right? Most times you interact with an application like Spotify, you're just trying to get somewhere. You're not trying to go through all of the tireless, frequent menus and terrible UI experiences of Spotify. All you're trying to do is play a damn playlist. So conceptually, being able to just tell your Rabbit R1 to play a playlist. It's a pretty cool concept for an experience, but that's something that you can ask Google Assistant to do. We'll talk about Google Assistant and what it does relative to the Rabbit R1 in a few, but for example, if you happen to be on a bus or in a public space where you don't want to be seen talking to your big orange device, your option is only to control Spotify using your voice, which is just such a bummer. It could be very, very simple to add a touchscreen to the second iteration and be able to just click a Spotify application. And then this would be a great little iPod clone, like a mini iPod. And the problem is there's a lot of interactions, like for example, when you're booking an Uber, that you'd like to be able to see. You'd like to be able to confirm that I got your right address. For example, there's many addresses in my city that are very, very close to my address with just slight changes, whether it's a zip code change or anything like that. And if it gets the wrong address, I could be screwed. I could be, going to the completely wrong place. It's just such a wild decision. But none of those are the core interactions that you're supposed to have with Rabbit R1. The core interaction with Rabbit R1 is holding down on the single button and then speaking to it.
Tell me about the weather in San Francisco, California today.
Checking weather in San Francisco, California for today.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Now, if you've ever used voice mode on ChatGPT, hopefully you know how great and how incredible this experience could be, right? If you haven't tried this already, go to ChatGPT right now, install ChatGPT on your phone, and then just go into voice mode and just have a conversation with it. Ask it to tell you about the latest sports games, like the latest scores in the NBA. Ask it to tell you about some great Roman battle. Ask it to tell you about some complex math formula, and then just have a conversation with it. And you'll be surprised with how fast it is and how easy it is to do. You can go on long conversations. I have pages and pages of conversations that I have with ChatGPT. Oh, I don't want to admit, maybe more than humans now, but it is an incredible experience, and it is an incredibly intelligent system. This is not that experience. It could be that experience, but it is not. The experience of conversing with the Rabbit R1 is pretty restricted because quite often you reach the end of what it is capable of doing. It will always require an internet connection, so there is some server-side work that's taking place, but it is slow and there's no on-screen interactions to confirm with you that it is going to answer your question. Basically, it has this small little bouncing rabbit head where the ears can indicate to you whether it's listening or not. But in terms of whether it's actually going to respond to your question, there's nothing on screen to make it clear. And quite often, it will take several seconds before it says, "I'm sorry, I can't help you with that," or the equivalent. Which it feels like all the stupidity of Siri in 2016 with none of the brilliance of what was the iPhone 6 or 7 at the time. Somewhere in that ballpark.
Tonight, remind me to do laundry.
Saving your note. I've saved the laundry reminder for tonight at the rabbit hole.
What are my reminders?
Saving your note. Laundry reminder saved at the rabbit hole.
Can you please tell me other reminders that I have?
Saving your note. Laundry reminder saved at the rabbit hole.
And then the only other alternative interaction point for the Rabbit R1 is the ability to go into camera mode, where, again, you can either switch the camera outwards or towards you, and then prompt the AI assistant to ask it a question, like, what is the weather in this area? Or what is this landmark that you see? Or how can I replicate this design? Or how do I look today? Or whatever the question might be. And it's a pretty disappointing experience. Again, these are interactions that you can have with ChatGPT by using your camera on your phone, and you'll get substantially better results. Frankly, I found a lot better experience with the Meta Ray-Bans glasses, the new version that allows you to take pictures and ask an AI assistant about it. That was really cool and a lot faster and more usable than this. So this is a $200 device, which compared to most smartphones is quite a reasonable price point. But there is no one that I can imagine ever replacing their smartphone with this. This feels like an incremental device. So it's a sidekick, right? So why did they not design it as a sidekick? It takes its own dedicated SIM card. Now, this is a data SIM card rather than a cellular SIM card. So for many wireless plans, you can actually add this for a discounted price, but not for everyone. And a lot of times it'll cost $5 or $10 a month. So why could you not just connect it to your phone? You could if you happen to have a wireless plan that supports a hotspot. Your phone could be a hotspot for this and it could use Wi-Fi. But again, why not just connect this straight through Bluetooth and use it as a pure companion device? Well, I think I know why. It's because Rabbit very much wanted to build their own platform. This is not the first time that a company wanted to do something like that. For example, Oculus or Meta wanted to do it with their Quest series. Design your own platform so then you're not beholden to Apple or Google, and you could realistically collect all of the sales proceeds from any application that you sell or any subscription that you sell. That's the motivation behind building their own platform. Technically, there's less restrictions that will happen if they build their own platform, and they could build features that hypothetically could be faster and more usable. They could use their own AI systems. But Rabbit's a small company. I don't know exactly what their valuation is, but they are putting themselves against very, very powerful companies that have a lot more resources to do these big things. And they are putting themselves against devices that have a lot more capabilities of doing so. So, as we've seen in the Pixel 8 Pro, Google and Apple and others are moving towards the concept of on-device AI processing. So, for simple queries, you could realistically just ask your phone and it'd be almost instantaneous. More complex queries, you just send to the server. The Rabbit R1 has an incredibly underpowered processor, and so realistically, it will never do substantial on-device processing. It will always request from the server. So if you have bad internet, or the server goes down, or for whatever reason, you will get a lot worse experience with the Rabbit R1 than your equivalent smartphone. This all sounds like just a wave of criticism that probably is in line with a lot of other criticism that's happened for the Rabbit R1 and the Humane AI pen. But why did I want to focus so heavily at the beginning of the video on this concept of nuance? Well, the nuance is in concept, I truly believe AI and AI-based hardware will be incredibly capable and impressive in the future. This is not it. I totally understand that. I am not going to convince you to buy this on some sort of promise of what this device will be in the future, because I still haven't seen anything suitable coming out of the Rabbit company that makes me think they're going to turn this around. But AI hardware and AI software in the future will drastically change the way that we live our lives. It will drastically improve our ability to do work and be productive. It will drastically improve our experience and our happiness and our interactivity and our content. It will allow us to have a lot more custom interactions with assistants that are more tailored to our use cases. There is so much that can come out of AI hardware and software. And the Rabbit R1, minus the lack of a touchscreen, a small touchscreen, or too small of a screen, any sort of new interactions, a suitable camera, suitable battery life, minus all that stuff, conceptually, this is a perfectly fine device. It's just they missed on so many different points. What could happen in the future with the Rabbit R1? Well, I'd be surprised with all of the just pure hatred that has been spouted about the Rabbit R1, some of it justified. I doubt that there's a Rabbit R2. But if there is a Rabbit R2, what should it look like in my eyes? Well, it should look like a touchscreen. It should have a touchscreen, right? You just have a touchscreen, drop this stupid scroll wheel, have a couple volume buttons, make a square-shaped phone. It's fine if you want to run on some sort of offshoot Android that doesn't have the native Google Play Store. Maybe give people the ability to basically jailbreak it and run Google Play anyways if they so choose. Have applications, at least a good 20 applications that are designed to run on the smaller screen. And yes, make the assistant a central part of it. Maybe there's image generation. Maybe there's video generation once OpenAI Sora is supported. Anything like that. That could be a really cool device. But I still think that for the near future, our phones will continue to be the core compute unit for our daily lives. And it will take a lot to dethrone phones. This is not going to do so. Thank you for watching InnoIso. I hope you appreciated this video. It was a little bit different, but I hope you understand that I really want this concept of a nuanced review of a product that frankly missed the mark. And I think there's a lot of good criticism out there for this, but I think there's a lot of people that are just frankly dogpiling because they think AI is the next cryptocurrency or the next NFT. While this doesn't do a lot to help prove those people wrong, there's a lot out there that will. So thank you for watching InnoIso. I hope you like this video. Be sure to get subscribed, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.